how we win the midterms, and not just win them with a small margin and a little bit of a governing majority, but how we win these midterms in a way that reminds the American people that there's a different path forward, is we win big, right? And people feel like their vote makes a difference everywhere, in every corner of this country. This environment looks good for Democrats. Every sort of marker is there. The midterm electorate is better. The president's numbers are in the tanks, right? Like all the things that you want to happen in the environment are there, but we still have to do the really hard work. And the minute that we think this is going to be easy is the minute we lose.
Heather Williams has one of the most important jobs in American politics that most folks don't talk about enough. She's the president of the Democratic Legislative Campaign Committee, the DLCC, the organization responsible for building Democratic power in state legislatures all across this country. And if you care about abortion rights, voting rights, education, healthcare, or even who draws the maps, then you should care about what's happening in statehouses, because that's where so many of these fights are actually being won or lost. Heather's been in the trenches of this work for years, helping flip chambers, defend majorities, and build long-term infrastructure in places folks often overlook. And at this moment, with 2026 on the horizon, the stakes could not be higher. Heather Williams, welcome to At Our Table.
Thank you. It's so great to be here with you.
It's great to see you, my friend. I really want to start on the work that you have been doing, the work that the DLCC has been doing. Since Trump returned to office, Democrats have now flipped 28 state legislative seats in special elections. These are seats that are flipping from Republican to Democrat. That's not noise. It's a real signal. So what's driving this move for Democrats to win these legislative seats across the country?
Yeah, the 28 seats is incredible, right? These are seats that we have been flipping in red states and blue states and competitive districts, all of them. And, I think what's so important is that it is a constant reminder that Democrats can connect with voters, that you stand up and you run for office, you are a member of a community and you are raising your hand to create something different. And when we talk about the issues that voters care most about, when we talk about the rising costs and how those costs affects the individual and the collective, we can win. And I think what's been interesting, and, so many people are, they sort of sit up a little bit straighter when you talk about these 28 flips that have happened this cycle already, is because, it doesn't always feel like we're winning.
Yeah.
And the truth is the way that you get out of the situation we are in is you get through it, right? And by getting through it, every election matters. And what has been astonishing to me as someone who's been in this state work literally forever is that voters in places that felt like, their voice didn't matter recognizes that it does.
Yeah.
And how we win the midterms, and not just win them with a small margin and a little bit of a governing majority, but how we win these midterms in a way that reminds the American people that there's a different path forward, is we win big, right? And people feel like their vote makes a difference everywhere, in every corner of this country.
So people are probably thinking right now, Jaime, I know about the DNC, but what the hell is the DLCC? And who is Heather Williams? So Heather, answer those questions for us. What is the DLCC and who is Heather Williams?
Sure. So the DLCC, we'll start there, is the party committee responsible for state legislatures. Our job is to look across all of the 6,000 plus state legislative elections that happens every cycle, and to identify the places where we can build tangible power for Democrats in their state houses. So we're looking at breaking Republican supermajorities and putting Democrats in the negotiating room. We're looking at flipping vulnerable Republican chambers. We're looking at building trifectas and durable governing power for Democrats so that they can move the needle on the issues that we care most about, and they can show what real leadership in the Democratic Party looks like. So that's our job here at DLCC. I am someone who has been involved in state legislative politics my entire career. I love this ballot level.
Yeah.
I love the impact that our state houses have on people's lives. It's fast. It's meaningful.
Mm-hmm.
It makes a difference. And, there's no one better than a state legislator who can help you navigate the friction of government that inevitably happens, whether you've lost your trash can or, you're trying to figure out how to apply for, I don't know, student aid to go to college. State legislators are the heartbeat of these communities, being able to connect people to help solve those problems and also, carry a message of hope and get things done.
And the State House, and I think a lot of folks, we get so focused on the presidency,
Mm-hmm.
and then we get so focused on the House and the Senate here in Washington, D.C., that we don't really realize the rubber meets the road at our state houses. The most meaningful and most impactful legislation that gets passed doesn't happen here in Washington, D.C., and it happens in state capitals across the country. You mentioned earlier a trifecta, and there's some of our folks probably don't know what that means. What is a trifecta, and why is it important? The trifectas that we've had, what are some of the meaningful legislation that's actually come out of places like Minnesota and Michigan and other spaces?
Yeah, well, let's take the most recent example. This is a great question. So in Virginia last November, the governor was on the ballot and the state house was on the ballot. And we were able to hold on and build that majority in the state house. Obviously, we now have Governor Abigail Spanberger. So now we have Democrats control the House, the Senate, and the governor's office.
And that's a trifecta.
That is a trifecta.
Yes.
That is exactly right. And what that meant is when they went into legislative session in January, they were able to secure all kinds of things for Virginians, including codifying reproductive rights in their constitution. They were able to do voting rights restoration. They were able to codify marriage. And they were able to have, as they are actively doing right now, an impact on the redistricting fight that is happening. Those are some of the kind of big tangible things. We also know that they're working on moving the needle on costs in all kinds of ways, whether it's housing, electricity. This is the kind of governing power that allows us to get things done on behalf of, our communities in the way that shows democratic values and attending to the issues that voters care most about.
Well, and I mean, it's so important. And what Tim Walz did in Minnesota about feeding kids.
Absolutely.
I mean, that happened because we had a trifecta in Minnesota.
It did. And you know what's interesting about this? I love this fact. So when we saw, Governor Walz become the vice president nominee, what he talked about is the stuff that happened in the legislature, right? Like, to your exact point.
He was in Congress.
That's exactly right.
But he spent most of his time talking about...
That's exactly right, because this is where you get things done. Yeah. The timeline is faster. It's swifter. It's felt by people in tangible ways, and that is what voters are looking for.
Well, you really have been a breath of fresh air coming into the DLCC because you've brought new life and energy, and you're flipping seats. But for decades, Republicans have really spent a lot of energy and time investing and being very strategic about investing in state houses. And they've had organizations like ALEC and other outside entities that have invested in that infrastructure. How far behind were Democrats really in terms of this competition? And where are we now in terms of being able to compete with them?
Yeah, it's a great question. So in 2010, Republicans devised this plan called Project Red Map. And Project Red Map was the way that they transformed the landscape of state legislatures in Republicans' favor, right? Yeah. And with that, they've been able to pass all kinds of policy, most of which I think we would say is harmful, right, to our communities. They've been able to move that Overton window. They controlled redistricting process last decade. But we fought back. And, as we moved through the end of last decade, we won more chambers. We had more of an impact in redistricting than we had in the 2010 cycle. And here we sit today having built meaningful majorities and trifectas that are, putting us in a position to have real meaningful impact. And I think specifically, on this build back, one of the things that I think is important for people to really recognize, I know that I do, is that roughly 50% of Americans have some Democrat in leadership in their state house, meaning we've got a majority in some capacity over 50% of Americans. Like, that's tangible. As we talk about, I think, in politics all the time, right? Maps don't vote. And there's a lot of land in places where Republicans have these majorities. So while they have numerically more than we do, impact-wise, like, we're neck and neck. And this election creates deep opportunities for us to change that frame and build even more.
Do you think the party as a whole is treating state legislatures, the work that you all do at the DLCC, with the urgency that the moment really demands? Because, again, I think fighting for democracy right now, it is not just a fight here in Washington, D.C. That fight is happening in Statehouses right at this moment. Do you see the urgency in the party? And if not, what can we do to really ramp it up?
It is definitely increased, but I think the deep desire to provide a counter to this president is the vast majority of people's priority, right?
Yeah.
And bringing them into the, sort of the chess game of, okay, we can care about that, and federal solutions are great, and right, like federal power is critical. But alongside that, we have to care about the states because these two things work in harmony. And to your exact point, this is how we're able to move the needle, not just against Trump, but for something. And that, I think, will be so important as we move through this election and then into an incredibly, what is expected to be an incredibly robust presidential primary where, we need to come out with a great nominee who's ready to carry the torch forward. But we need to keep making progress on our agenda as Democrats to show people what our leadership looks like so that we put everyone in the best position.
When we think about the work that you do at the DLCC in an election year, can you explain to folks what are the big buckets that you have? You're president of DLCC. You're looking at all of these state house races across the country. What are the tangible things that the DLCC will do in this midterm elections in order to assist and help?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, one, we're looking at making sense of this map and identifying the races, the individual level races out of the 6,000 that are on the ballot in November, which ones are most important. And from there, we're making sure that those races are the ones that are getting the resources, that are getting resources not just from us, right, but are getting resources from anyone and everyone who wants to participate. Because building that path back to power, tangible hard power that allows us to wield it in our states is so important. So that's, sort of number one at how we think about really identifying where those races are. From there, we've got a team of folks who are arm in arm with these campaigns, making sure that we've got the best data, the best targeting, that our paid communication plans are contextualized with what else is happening on the ballot. We're in so many shared battlegrounds. Our resource level looks different than what it does for a top of the ticket race. So making sure that we're moving forward with paid communication before voters get their ballot so we can build the name ID for our candidates. That is so important. And I think the thing that often goes sort of unrecognized but is so important is we are shining a spotlight on these candidates in this ballot level and working really hard to bring people into it. And, as we were talking a little bit earlier, the conversation is so much, right? Like, how do we build and protect federal power? We know that there's just not enough attention and resources into this ballot level. So when you can identify the races that matter, you can put a spotlight on them, you can tell the story of what is possible in the states. It means that these races go from, maybe being able to do paid communication to being able to maximize it and doing it early enough to break through.
So we have a lot of folks who are thinking about, okay, I want to participate in the midterms. I want to make sure that Democrats break supermajorities in legislatures. I want to make sure Democrats take back the House and the Senate in Washington, D.C., and ultimately I want to win the White House back. How does a dollar invested at the state legislative level actually move compared to a dollar spent on the federal level? If you could just give a sense of what the impact is. So if somebody has limited funds and they said, okay, I really want to have an impact, tell us how valuable that dollar is on the state legislative level.
I think, when we look at our races and our ballot level, we are fighting to earn every dollar, right? And we are deploying it in the most efficient and strategic way that we possibly can. I think that, if you were someone thinking about your budget and you were looking at, a Senate race that you're hoping would be in play, or you're looking at a state legislative race that could have an impact on hard power in your state capital, the dollar in your state legislature is going to go so much further. The kind of work that these candidates do not only moves their own races forward, but we're competing in all kinds of places that allow us to reintroduce voters to Democrats in a way that we haven't done in a long time.
Yeah.
And so I think, we really feel like a dollar spent at this ballot level is incredibly strategic and it is incredibly powerful. And, you're not one of a million here. You're, one of a few making a real big difference.
Well, one of the things that I know a lot of folks are concerned about right now are the restrictions on voting in the country. And again, this is some of the stuff that is percolating on a state house level. Are there any hot spots right now that you are particularly concerned about as we move into the midterm in terms of restrictions on voter access? Are you concerned about the SAVE Act that's happening on the federal level right now, or do you see any state replicating that?
Yeah, Florida. Florida is moving,
God.
right? No surprise.
No surprise at all.
But it's sort of thematically, right, to everything that you've been saying. The SAVE Act is obviously a piece of legislation that's sitting in the Senate right now. Everyone's, kind of waiting to figure out what would happen. It seems like they don't have the votes for it. But while everyone is paying attention to that, they've lost sight of the stuff moving in the states, which will be, in effect, faster than the SAVE Act ever will be. And I think every time we talk about voting, every time we talk about access, every time we talk about ensuring that, that Americans can participate, those laws are in our states. And when we try to do federal legislation, that umbrellas it, we must not lose sight that the policies that either copycat it or provide an alternative, depending on who's moving it, right? Us, the John Lewis bill, the Republicans, the SAVE Act, right? That it's getting done in the states while we are all navigating the federal process. So I think, for folks who are really concerned about that, I hear you. It's scary. Also know that we've got state legislators in session right now who are doing everything they can to continue to support the execution of our elections, and that we are going to be prepared. And voting in this country has been safe and secure, and we're going to fight to make sure that it is. So I hear the pain, right, and being afraid of it. I also feel as confident as I can that we are going to navigate through this, and we are going to win in ways that make it undeniable of what the American people wanted.
Folks, listen, if your vote was not valuable, they would not be fighting so damn hard in order to take it away.
Amen.
And it's important that we engage, that we just don't participate in just the presidential election, but we engage all the time, and that we participate in these special elections. In South Carolina, just recently, we had a state house race. It was a +8 seat that we lost by, I think it was 15 votes. 15 votes. I mean, you think about it. That's 2 pews in a church, right? It is just a handful of people. You see that in the parking lot at a grocery store or something like that. 15 people. And that could have made the difference in terms of getting legislation pushed or retaining women's rights to control their own bodies, to stop these purges of DEI and all kinds of things. So it's really, really important for folks to understand. Let's get the margins in which we win so big that they can't do anything but say, oh, God, they just kicked their ass, right? Now, you said Florida. This episode will air right after a special election in Florida. It's Florida House District 87. Emily Gregory is our Democratic candidate. And this one is special because it is in Mar-a-Lago.
That is true.
Tell us a little bit about that race and why it's significant for us to just go all in.
We've got a great candidate there who, is so indicative of the kind of people who are running for state legislative office, right? She's a mom. She wants good for her community. She's deeply involved in it, and she's connecting with voters. And, this is this has historically been a Republican seat. And what's really interesting about this, aside from the fact that it's in Mar-a-Lago, which makes it, particularly interesting and maybe a little juicy, is that, she represents the kind of districts that we've been winning in these specials and in this cycle already. And it represents the kind of districts that we are prepared to win in November. Mm-hmm. It's such an interesting moment of, here we have the president's own home district in play in a way that it's never been because people are so dissatisfied with his administration and the leadership he is providing. And it tells such a good story of what it means. We've got these great candidates who talk about the things voters care about, who are trusted, and can show us the path forward as we march these last few months into these midterms.
It's incumbent upon all of us to do all that we can to recruit candidates. For it doesn't matter. It can be a Republican plus 75 district. Recruit a Democrat to run in that district because, we want to compete everywhere. But you never know what will happen on Election Day in an atmosphere like this. People are just fed up, they're pissed off, and they're ready. So we've been in South Carolina. I've been working with Crystal Spain, the state party chair, and we have been recruiting, and we are very close. I hope by the time this airs, we can announce that we have recruited a Democrat to run for every state house seat in South Carolina, and we have 124. That'd be the first time in my lifetime that I think we've had a candidate for every state house seat. So tell us a little bit about what you all are doing to help push and spark this recruitment effort, because I've seen other states. Idaho, I think, was one. Texas, they recruited somebody to state house. And I know that you all are really helping to push to break supermajorities and all. So give us a little bit about what you're doing in terms of the recruitment effort.
Yeah, the South Carolina, I love it.
Yes.
We're excited. South Carolina is a place where we could break that Republican supermajority.
Yes.
It's on our map. And what's interesting to sort of tie the recruitment right together is your neighbors to the north in North Carolina. They have recruited candidates in all of their districts. They broke their supermajority in 2024. Mm-hmm. We all know what that election looked like. It was an incredible bright spot. And, to your point, when you've got people in these districts, we can compete.
Yeah.
And, we're not going to win every election, but we're going to connect with voters that are impactful not only to the races that we are running, but to Democrats in general on the whole ticket. How do we get to places and talk to voters that we haven't talked to in a long time? How do we validate the Democratic Party and what we believe in and what we know to be true about what things look like when Democrats lead?
Yeah.
And so we're really excited. Our work explicitly when we think about recruitment is we really want to make sure that there's a great team in place who can support these candidates, who can make sure that they're set up for success. Again, recognizing that, not every district is going to always be on that path to power per se, but that their contribution and their participation and their ability to talk to voters is so incredibly important. And in March of 2026, we have no idea what November is going to look like.
That's exactly right.
And I think, when we think about what we've won already, we've done it under, contexts like the Iran war.
Yeah.
We've done it during the Liberation Day tariffs, like the distractions, the just like wild way that this president is leading and leading for his friends and for no one else does not matter. People are unhappy and they're voting. So we need to be ready to compete everywhere and to also recognize what those key inflection points are for power so that we can focus our energy and intention on doing the most good for now and into the future.
I love that. I love that. So which states right now are you most focused on, and which ones keep you up at night?
Ooh, they all keep me up at night. But I will say, we are competing in the sort of right now traditional battlegrounds.
Yep.
So Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Arizona, Minnesota. These are all places where we have very slim Democratic majorities, or we are fighting to challenge these really weak Republican majorities. But I would say, interestingly, it is the breaking of these supermajorities and putting, new legislative chambers and states back on the map as we build not only something tangible for 2026, but when we think about the future, we think about the future of the redistricting fights that will take place this decade because the VRA falls or because Republicans are just going to continue to mid-cycle redistrict. We think about the population movement and what it means on the other side of 2030. So, really building for the here and now and also for the future is something we've always done really well at DLCC. And it's really neat to see that moment come to fruition again as we think about what we need to do now and how it will play out as we move through 28, 30, and 32.
Yeah. If you had a wish list, 3 chambers that you could take right now, what's your top 3?
I mean, the Minnesota House. I'm a Minnesotan, right? Like, my family's there. Speaker Hortman, right, was a dear friend of mine. We lost her, obviously. I feel like that is a place that I want them to be back in the majority. They did so much good when they had it. And I think it would be just like an incredible honor of Speaker Hortman's legacy.
Let me tell you, if you and Kim Martin, the DNC chair, the dynamic duo, and you all could do that, would be big. It would be big. So Minnesota's one. What's another one that you would want to?
I mean, I want them all, Jamie. Literally, I want them all. Like, that is the thing, right?
I can't pick for my kids. I want them. I want them all to come home for the holidays.
100%. I want if honestly, if I could wave that magic wand, what I hope happens is that come this fall, we have done really great work together to put these candidates and these chambers in a place to be able to take advantage of this environment. And that means that we not only recognize the opportunity, because that's only half the battle, but we recognize the work that we have to do. And I think a map this big with 42 chambers on it, the biggest we've ever had, with an opportunity to flip, more than 650 seats across the country, that will feel like a pretty incredible moment. And then, we'll have a bluer map on the other side of the election day, and that'll feel real good.
I love that. One of the things that we see that it's often in state legislatures where we see women and candidates of color get their start. And also where they face the most suppression. So what does the DLCC do specifically to support and to protect these candidates?
Yeah. So, we're bringing together people, our legislators throughout the year in sort of different capacities, making sure that as they're growing their leadership, that they've got a network, a support, that as they are in their leadership positions, that they have a friend to lean on, right? Who knows what's going on, who understands how hard and at times, right, like lonely leadership can be.
Yeah.
So we're really making sure that we're building that because we know that when our elected leaders across the country from different states, from different backgrounds, have that connection point, they can do really good, right?
Yep.
And a little fun fact for you, when we picked up the chambers in 2022, every House chamber elected a Black speaker. So when you're talking about opportunities and what it means to have, influence and power and representation, there is a no better place than this ballot level.
Yeah, and there were some amazing speakers. I mean, I think of Virginia. I think of Pennsylvania. I mean, just in Michigan, we had a Black speaker. In Maine, we had a Black speaker. I mean, and they've made such a meaningful difference.
Absolutely. Right. It matters, right?
It really
matters that we have different viewpoints and perspectives and
Yes.
backgrounds and experiences in our leadership. And it makes it so much richer and so much better.
Yeah.
And the things that they've been able to accomplish and will continue to accomplish, like, it should make us all proud
Yeah.
and want to see that in more places.
Well, we often think about the positive, we win, and the change. But I think it's also sometimes important to give people a little dose of the negative if we don't. So if Democrats lose the fight because everybody didn't get off the couch to go out and vote, or people just decided to stay silent. If Democrats lose the fight for state legislatures in this cycle over the next decade, what does that mean for the country?
It means less rights for Americans all over the place. It means that the path to the presidency has a question mark because Republicans who are willing to carry forward the president's election denying exist in places that are meaningful on that path back. It means that we don't stand a chance in the redistricting fight and Republicans gerrymander the congressional map in a way that Democrats never get power again. These are not small things, and these are not intended to be sort of the kind of alarm bells that are, built with words and not with meaning beneath them. These are the stakes. Like, this is real. When I think about every chamber that we can flip, I think about, the millions of people that live there and its impact on not only public policy and how people's lives can be changed or enhanced and how their rights can be protected, but what it means for, our voting laws, what it means for participation, what it means for Democrats' success writ large. We've talked in so many ways. It is state legislators that draw congressional maps.
Yep.
It is state legislators that protect that path to the presidency. It is state legislators that are enshrining our rights in our state's constitutions to ensure that we can love who we want to love, that we can get the reproductive health care that we deserve. And that's going to continue unless Republicans take over. Their agenda is cruel. At best.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And they are unwavering in using their power to enact it.
Yep.
And that, I think, is the biggest warning sign. There's no holding back from Republicans.
One of the things that really gives me hope right now is that I see the sleeping giant in American politics starting to stir, and that is young people. Every major change in this country has happened because of young people. Even the founding of this country itself, young people sparked that. The civil rights movement, young people were at the heart of that. And I think young people are itching to get up off of the couch, to not be silent in the face of all of the hatred and the injustice that we see in the world. And I think one of the great places for young people to cut their teeth is to run for office, and particularly to run for state legislatures. So in your words, why should a young person run for the state house or the state senate this cycle or a cycle in the future?
The opportunity to affect change and to represent your community is incredible. It is not only an honor, but the kind of difference that you can make in your state house for your community on behalf of everyone is monumental. So I would say it's both critically important, but it's also such an incredible place to make a difference. And it's an incredible place to learn how to be an elected official and to serve your constituents and to deliver on promises that you made to voters. And if one day you want to run for a different office, you've got incredible experiences that will carry you through that.
Yeah. Folks, young folks who are listening or watching, I really hope that you will consider running. This is a great place to really learn. Again, it's where the rubber meets the road, to learn and enact things that could have a positive impact on your community and the people that you love the most. One of the things that would be interesting, because I think a lot of our folks are learning that there are all of these D entities, right? There's the DNC, there's the DGA, there's the DLCC, there's the DSCC. Do you work with, as the president of the DLCC, do you work with some of the other folks in the ecosystem? And so kind of tell how you all work together in order to move the party as a whole in one direction.
It's important that we're in communication, that we're sharing information, that we see vulnerabilities together and opportunities. And what I think folks might find interesting is, so many of our targeted legislative races are in targeted congressional races, which are in targeted governor's races and targeted U.S. Senate races. So when we think about the impact that we can have and recognize the incredible messengers that our candidates are, and the way that they're able to connect with regular people because they are regular people, that not only creates space for them to win their campaigns, but it creates space for the whole Democratic ticket, right? And that's going to be so important. So I believe in what we can do. I believe that we're all really incredibly focused on the hard work it's going to take. This environment looks good for Democrats.
Yep.
Every sort of marker is there. The midterm electorate is better. The president's numbers are in the tanks, right? Like all the things that you want to happen in the environment are there, but we still have to do the really hard work. And the minute that we think this is going to be easy is the minute we lose.
And you need resources to do all of that.
We do.
So what's the general budget that, you're running for a state house or as an entity, a national entity that's working with all of these various folks? What type of money are you guys looking at? And where can people who want to send you some money, where could they send you some money?
Well, I love this question. So we've got a $50 million budget for this year. It is our ambitious budget.
Yeah.
It is small in comparison to what our friends at the top of the ticket are looking at, right? We can do really good things. And we can make real, tangible progress in the states with this kind of resources. So DLCC.org is where folks can contribute, can figure out ways to participate. I think the thing that I hope people hear is that whether you're in North Carolina or South Carolina, or you were in Florida, or you were in California, the impact of winning power in the states is not just felt within those confined borders of that state. It really does have an impact on our ability to move the needle on so many things. And I hope that people see a sort of a positive force here and feel invigorated to get involved because we've got real opportunities. We're going to be unveiling targeted candidates on our website over the next few months. So folks should pay attention and find someone they love and let's do this.
I love it. I love it. So Heather, we've had the main course and now it's time for the dessert.
Let's do it.
And that is the Sit Your Ass Down Award. It is one of the favorite parts of the episode, but you as a guest get the opportunity to present this honor to someone or something or some entity that just really needs to get themselves together. So who is your recipient of this week's Sit Your Ass Down Award?
So I'm going to take the Sit Your Ass Award down, and I'm going to say we need people to stand up. We need people to see beyond the federal races, beyond the statewide races that are shining bright in everyone's face, and we need them to pay attention to this ballot level. You can get so much done. You can accomplish so much. It feels really good, and no one is winning like we are right now.
I love that. So this week, we're not doing sit your ass down. We're stand your ass up.
Amen. Amen. Stand your ass up. That's exactly right.
So, folks, we need you to stand up. We need you to support these candidates that are running on a state house level, running for the state house, the state senate. We need you to support an organization like DLCC that is doing this work because it's so meaningful. Again, most of the things that have an impact on your day-to-day life happens at the state house level. Heather, as we close, I'm going to give you the opportunity to close this out. What is the message that you want people to have in their heads as we march to November of 2026 in these really crucial midterm elections?
We cannot take this opportunity for granted. We can see all the signs that say the wind is at our back and we've got this great opportunity and we can want it really bad, but we have to work for it. And we have to work for it everywhere. Because as we've been talking throughout this conversation, it's not just the Democratic seats that we may have lost over the last couple of years that we're trying to get back. We are trying to build the kind of power that makes an honest difference. And it's going to take all of us. It's going to take us standing our asses up and getting involved and participating and saying enough is enough, not just with our voice, but with our actions. So we've got a lot of work to do. We've got a lot of opportunities, and they're ours to take. And I'm very excited to be in this fight with everyone who is focused, everyone who is considering and is looking for a place to go. We've got you. I am hopeful because I know that we understand the strategy, the path forward, and how to get it done.
Well, Heather Williams, thank you so much for joining us at our table.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed today's show, please be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Follow us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pixel Plus, or anywhere you find your podcasts. For bonus content and analysis, join our community on Substack at jamieharrison.substack.com. At Our Table with Jaime Harrison is a production of Vision Blue Media. Our founding executive producers are Jason Hyder and Jaime Harrison. Our producer is Kyle Kelly. Our content consultants are Ernie Grigg and Clay Middleton. Our digital communications are led by Lauren Brown. Our social media strategist is Nia Asanza. Inez Smolansky provides production legal. Title sequence by Tom Hunt. Our theme song, Blonde Gone, is written by Dewey and published by Alibi Music Library. This episode was recorded at the DNC studio in Washington, D.C., and engineered by Johnny Wood and Scott Brown. Very special thanks to Heather Williams and her team at the DLCC. I'm Jaime Harrison, and I look forward to another conversation at our table.